Hey everybody, Dave here and welcome back. You know, last year when I had my boat out, I noticed when I had people sitting in the back seat that I had some issues with the water coming over the transom in the back into the splashway. And you know, I really didn't like that. And so one of the things I decided to do was get some of the weight off of the transom. I've already got a big motor and I also have a trolling motor on there, 25-gallon gas tank. There's a lot of weight back there. So when you add someone else there, you can have some issues with the boat riding lower. It's harder to get up on plane, a lot of other factors. So I decided the best thing I could do was to move my batteries from the back of the boat forward. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today, exactly how I went about doing it. I'm going to show you how I selected the right wire, built the enclosure, moved everything, the splices, everything. So stick around. You're not going to want to miss it. Okay, so as you can see back here, I've got my main motor right here, my 115. I put a 6 horsepower kicker on that mounting plate back there. And then underneath here, the front seat, I have a 25-gallon gas tank right here. You can see it goes all the way from there, all the way over there. And it's 18 inches by 7.5 high. And that can add quite a bit of weight. Now what I have done in the past is I've placed my batteries right here. I had my starting battery and then my deep cycle battery, which runs all my electronics. But when you add that weight, the tank, the motors, and then you have people sitting back here, it puts a lot of weight on the boat. Most boats are designed, if you come from the bow up here, down to about 2/3 is usually the balance point on a boat. So right about here, just forward of that rod holder is the balance point. So when you put all that weight back here, you know, your bow starts riding high like this. It's harder to get up on plane. And the other concern I had is on the side over here, I have a vent for the gas tank. You can see it right there. So with everything riding low, I'm afraid water is going to splash into that gas vent and get water in my tank. Now I do have a water separator over here, but still I don't want water in the tank. Water can really affect your motor, affect your parts in the motor. It can delaminate stuff. So you want to stay clean and make sure that no water is in that. The other thing I don't like is that when everything is loaded back here, water comes over the top of the transom right there into the splash well. And it does drain out the scupper, but I don't like it riding that high, the water riding that high up on the transom. So I want to bring the transom up. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take my batteries, I'm going to reroute the wires underneath here, come up along underneath here. As you can see, I've got wires up underneath here, under the gunnel, and they go all the way up. And so I'm going to take them, route them back around through, come on up here, under the gunnel. I'm going to go back up underneath, through the front of the console, and I'm going to come back right here, and I'm going to build a battery box that's going to go right there. That's going to handle both of my batteries. And the other reason I want to move these forward is because I'm going to be adding a trolling motor right here. And so by adding that trolling motor, it's a very short wire run for the trolling motor. So I've gone ahead and sized the wire, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But what I want to do right now is I want to take you inside. We'll head into the garage. I've taken up all my measurements here. And now what I want to do is build this battery enclosure. We'll get that in place and then we'll come back out here. I do have a battery switch I'm going to be adding to, and I've decided I'm going to mount that right about in here. So that's going to be sticking out just a little bit, and it'll give me quick access to changing the batteries when I do my runs. Okay, I've got the battery box here that we built in the garage, and I've added some of these wings right here. Because there's a taper there, and I thought it would be okay coming up straight. I would cover this, but it didn't quite make it, so I want to bring that taper forward. So I'm just going to set this down right here. We'll place it in, give it a test fit. There we go. Put this up, tap it forward as much as we can go. That looks pretty good. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to screw these down into the side here on both sides to pull that back out. So for the top now, I built up a cleat there that fits on there because you can see this is higher than back there, and I put some side cleats on here to lock it in. So let's give it a test fit, see how we look. So that's what it's going to look like right there, and that's fine with me. I'll be able to put stuff up on top of here, tackle boxes and things like that. It'll add some extra weight forward of that fulcrum back there, you know, where the balance point is on the boat, and I'll be able to get up here pretty easily to get to my trolling motor. It'll add some height, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is route the wires from here all the way back. I'm going to make a connection right up underneath here, and let me show you what I have for that and how I chose the wire size. Okay, let's talk about the wire that I chose for this application. The first thing you have to determine is your run. Now, the outboard is here, and then the manufacturer gives you so many length of wire that goes with the outboard. And in my case, it was enough to get to the back section of the boat, which is normal. All right. They don't want to put a huge amount of wire on there for costs, and they don't need to because the battery is very close to the outboard normally. So by moving this up, we're going to be extending it. We have to extend the wire size because of a thing called voltage drop. Now, there's two types of voltage drop in the marine industry. One is 3%, and that is 3% of voltage drop for things like electronics and critical things that cannot take a great deal of fluctuation. They're designed to work at a certain voltage. They have a little bit of leeway, but not much, only 3%. So anything you're running, like your electronics or, you know, bilge pumps, things like that, they're designed to run at 3%. Now, a motor that I determined through a bunch of research has about a 10% voltage drop starting rate. So you need to design for that. And so I have a chart that I found. I'm going to put it in the description below. But basically the chart has how long your run is in feet, how high your amperage is, and then where the two intersect is the maximum that wire size can hold. So what I did was I have 4 gauge coming out of the outboard now. And that is fine if you go to the battery right next to where I had the gas tank. But I'm going to be running things farther up, so I have to increase the wire size. So how do I determine that? Well, first you take your total run. All right. I didn't figure from where the 4 gauge wire is ending, where it normally would end at the batteries by the gas tank. I took it from there up, because if the batteries were there, then, you know, there's no voltage drop. So what I want to do is I wanted to put a wire size in big enough to make it appear as if the batteries were right there, so that there was almost no voltage drop based on the amperage being drawn. And all my research, what I came up with was that the outboard that I have draws about 170 amps from what I could find. Okay, so now I looked on the chart, and I know from where the 4 gauge wire ends to where I want to bring the batteries up to here, that total run up and back is about 14 feet. So that you have to double that. So that's 28 feet, because with DC current, it's up and back. It's not oscillating current where it goes like this. Okay, alternating current. You have to figure your full run up and your full run back. So that was about 28 feet. I got 30 feet of wire to make some extra connections and stuff. And so this wire cost me about $140. And let me tell you one thing about the wire. This is marine grade wire, all right? This is tinned. Okay, what I mean by tinned is that the copper strands in here, this is a bunch of copper strands, and each strand has some tinning on it. And the tinning prevents the copper from actually corroding. Copper is a soft metal and can corrode easily, although it is a good conductor for electricity. And so you don't want that corroding, especially in saltwater application. So I'm the kind of guy, I only want to do things once. And so I went ahead and I bought this to put in and be done with it. And I want to be safe. You don't want to fire on the boat. Definitely not. So anyway, you know, and what could cause a fire? Well, you know, you have a weak connection here and you're trying to force things in, it gets hot. So you don't want that. So, you know, you want to be safe about everything. So I bought the marine grade wire, this total run of 30 feet wire. I got on eBay. That was the best price I found. It was $140, included shipping, tax, and all that. All right. I know it's expensive, but again, you want to be safe. So now, why did I choose the 1/0 wire? Well, the 4 gauge from the outboard, okay, is good up into where we had the batteries. So now I want to go up above that. So I looked on the chart, okay, and I could actually get away with right around the edge of 2 to 1 gauge wire. So the 4 gauge, and it goes to 2, then it goes to 1, and then the next one up is 1/0. Well, you know what? I've decided to just take the plunge and go with the 1/0. So I have total, you know, amperage flow through this. I don't have any problems. It's actually a size and a half, say, above what I needed. And it's plenty flexible to get where I want to go. So that's what I chose for this application. So now what I did was I went ahead and crimped on here. The lugs, these are 3/8 lugs. For 1/0s, you buy them separately, and then they come with a shrink wrap here. And I used the crimping tool that I bought on Amazon for $19, $20. I mounted it to a 2x4, and it was able to do a great job crimping. All right. If I only had 1 or 2 connections, I would just solder it on. But being I have a lot of these connections to do for both this and the trolling motor, I decided to go and purchase the tool that I'm going to be using a lot. So anyway, so now let me show you the splices. Okay, here are the connectors that I got. And these are by Morse. All right. There's the number there for you. It does up to 1/0 on this side. And on the other side, it'll do up from 1/0 down to 14 stranded wire. So there's quite a range you can use these for. And so these were $17 on eBay, around there, and that included the shipping. So it was $34 for the 2 of them. I like these type because they are already insulated. Okay, if I have to get at the wire and tighten them, I can just pop the cap off here, and there's a set screw in there. Not sure if you can see it or not. There. But that set screw is what does the tightening. It drives down through here and it crimps the wire. On this side and on the other side, they're grease-filled sockets. So when you slide the wire in, that grease surrounds the wire and protects it from corrosion. So like I said, I like these because if I ever have to change anything or tighten it, I don't have to cut off shrink wrap and all the other stuff. Plus, it's very difficult to find a connector that'll go from 1/0 to 4 gauge. So the other thing I have to install is a battery switch. And so let's go outside. We'll run these. I'll show you how to make these connections, how I do it. And then we'll show you how to make the transition from the battery switch to the batteries. Okay, I removed the back seat and the cooler right here. I've set them off the boat to the side. I've also just taken off the swivel seats up front here, just lifted them off, put them back here by the transom. And so now I have plenty of room to work in here. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take these wires back here and I'm going to fish them up through to where I need to get them in here. Now, the other thing was, again, I'm trying to balance this boat, get more weight forward. So the trolling motor on front is going to help. Moving the batteries up into that box is definitely going to help. And then also the cooler now sets vertically with the keel of the boat. I am actually going to turn that and move it up behind the seats here. So that's going to move everything, the batteries, the cooler, all that up above the balance point of the boat. So let's get started now. I'll get through and put my pad down and take some of this stuff out so I can work and pull those wires through. Okay, to make my life easier, I'm going to take some wire like this and I'm going to feed it down through, bend it in a U on the end, wrap the wire around and pull them through that way. It's going to be a lot easier than trying to reach from both sides. Okay, so now that I've got both the wires through, what I want to do is I want to shorten this one up. This one actually goes up through and runs all the way up to the console up front. So there's no reason for it to be that long. I'm going to cut it down and then resplice it up by the box. So this one here though, for the starter, we're going to have to cut and splice right here, starting right here and up and over, and that shouldn't be too bad. So let me go ahead and cut those tie wraps up underneath here, and then we'll pull this one through and get it out of the way. So now that I have the electronics wiring, which was 14.2, pulled all the way up through here, and there it lays on the floor, and I've also pulled through the 14 gauge wire for the outboard to starter, and that is laying right inside there. So now what I need to do is we need to start and work this way so that we save the most wire for making other connections. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be mounting this battery switch right here. This is an off position, 1 and 2, or both batteries and 2. And I'm going to be placing that right about here, but I am going to be drilling it and bringing it in from the outside. As you can see, there's a ring right here. And so what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to drill these 4 holes so I have an area to know where the hole saw is going to go. I will draw a line crisscross across here, and that X will be the exact center of this. Then what I can do is drill through, pull it through from the back, and bolt it in so it has a nice clean finish. So the only thing protruding out of this sidewall right here is this face right here, and so that's what we want. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll position that and then we'll drill it out. Okay, I got a drill bit that just barely fits in here, so that's nice and tight. That'll be give me my pilot holes all the way around here. Chuck that in the drill. Right like that. All right. I was already underneath here to see where I want to put this, so I believe I want to put it right there. So I will level it up. It looks good, and we'll drill through. So there's my one mark. There we go. So I took a bolt and put it in there so I know I'm not going to move anything. There we go. Now we'll check, make sure everything lines up. And there we go. So everything works really good right there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and draw a line through the center each way, put a mark there, and then I will drill through with this hole saw. Okay, so with my X right there, that's where I need to drill, right for this very center. I'm going to use this smaller drill bit to get started. That looks good. Good. Now I'll change it out and use the hole saw. Whenever you're using a hole saw on fiberglass, you want to run it backwards. You don't want these teeth grabbing. You just want to score the fiberglass till you're all the way through. Now I just went forward to get the pilot bit in there. Now we'll go backwards. There we go. We'll have to do a little bit of sanding on that, just so that that fits. I wanted to go a little small because I want this to be a precision fit. So let's get the sanding drum. We'll work through that, open that up a little bit, and then we can mount that switch. Nice and lightly, we want to just go through until it fits in there. That's nice. So now we'll be able to go ahead and mount this, and it'll give a nice finished look. Okay, so now that I fastened the positive on the switch right there, now I fed everything back through here, and now I'm going to bring those two wires up together with the connector and cut it, and then the rest will be left over for my negative. Okay, I measured where I need to go, and now I had a set of heavy-duty cable cutters right here I'm going to use to cut that. If you don't have these, you can use a hacksaw, grinder, something like that. Okay, and that's going to go right there. I left myself a little bit extra. Now I'll cut this one. There we go. I want to leave that red on there so I can identify these. So now I'll take these back with a utility knife, and we'll put the connector on. Okay. Okay, once it's in, just a matter of tightening up the set screw. You want to make sure it's good and tight. There we go. And then there's a cap that goes right in there. Keeps any moisture out. It's a nice tight fit over here. So now we'll do the other side. Okay, with the second one in and tight, we're good to go. Makes for a nice connection. We'll tuck them up under here out of the way when I finish both of these connections, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now that I've got the negative side done as well, I will put the plugs back in, the set screw ports. And if you notice, I staggered these so that they would lay flatter instead of bunching them up one on top of the other. So now it's just a matter of fastening them up underneath here like this with a few tie wraps that I have here, and then we'll make the connections up front. Okay, I'm just taking some 150 sandpaper and shining up those terminals really nice. That looks good. Take a little bit of marine grease, just a dab like that, and I'll just put it on there right like that. Now we can put that on the terminal. Now each one of these has a lock nut underneath to keep this nut from loosening up. So when you get ready to get down on these, you don't want to kill it, okay? You just want to snug them up. Nice and gentle. right like that, because this is only plastic back here. You don't want to break everything off. So now I got everything in place. I'm going to go ahead and route these over to the battery box, and I'm going to hang these up above me here, get them all out of the way, tucked away, and tie wrapped up. Okay, so what I've done before I set the trays is I've removed the wires. I've pulled them back through. And the reason for that was because this was a sharp edge on here. With the wires coming through, it came at an angle. I didn't want the edge setting right against that sharp edge right here. So what I did was I took a drum sander, a small drum sanding disc, and I put it at an angle like that, and then just went in here. I smoothed that out in the back and in the front here. So now that it's a nice smooth edge here. I don't have to worry about the wires rubbing. And so now what I'm going to do is set the trays here. So I've went ahead and I have drilled a couple of holes in here. I built one in the corner down there, and then I've drilled two down here and two up here. And the reason for that is because I want the screws down below the actual battery. I want the battery to set up here. I don't want any screws rubbing on that. So I've got a screw on each side there and there, and I'm going to put the strap down, and then with the screws close like that, when I pull up on the strap, it won't bend this box. So let's get those in place. I've got the smaller one going up here, and I'm placing the screws in the back here, and the bigger one is going to go in the back here like that. Now, one of the things I do need to do, if you see, this is a little bit of an angle here. So I have a piece of plywood I'm going to put in here, pressure treated plywood, to make that level with here, and then I can fasten these down, put the straps under, and I'll go ahead and do that right now. Now the screws I'm using here are actually Deck King exterior screws. I've been using these on this boat when I did the remodel on this about 20 years ago, and they have been holding up really well. I've had none of them rust or pop or break, and they're really well suited for this type of application. Stainless can be expensive, and so when you're putting these in an area where they're not going to be seen, they work great. Okay, so I use the deck screws up here, and now for this application I'm going to be using these stainless screws. Are about 3/4. These were 1 1/4 up here. So because I'm going directly to the carpet, before I was on a piece of plywood. So these straps that I'm using are simply sleeping bag straps. I got these on Amazon. You can get several of them for a few dollars, and I like these better because they have a quick connect. So when I put it together, I can disconnect. I don't have to reset them every time. Just pop them apart, take the batteries out to charge them. And I like to take my batteries completely out of the boat to charge them. So now what I'll do is I'll pull the wires through, and then I will set the box, and then we'll drop the batteries in and give everything a test run. Okay, so now that I've got the wires through, straps all folded over, everything brought in, now it's a matter of setting the box in place. And all I need to do is bring it right up tight this way, and that should be good. Now what I've done is I've pre-drilled some holes here on the sides, and I'm going to screw some stainless screws into here to hold this in place. Then I can square it up this way, and I can fasten it down. If you notice, I have pocket screws right here, and there's a screw I've already got started, and I can zip that right down. So let me get these in place, and we'll put a couple of screws in from the side. Okay, that locks it in really good. You got one more on each side, and then we'll set the batteries. So let me show you what I have now that everything's finally set up. I have the trolling motor battery towards the back, and I have the starter motor battery towards the front. The reason for that is I gain an extra foot or so. It's probably not necessary, but I thought it'd just be easier to do that. It also gives me a little more room back here because this battery is not as big. This is a 24 and this is a 27 series. So I bring in the power off of the switch up here from number 1 to the number 1 battery, off the switch to the number 2 battery. And then all the commons, the blacks, the neutrals, whatever you want to call them, all get tied together. This is for the electronics. This is for the trolling motor. This is connecting both batteries, and this feeds back to the regular motor and the whole system. So now it is recommended you put, for the trolling motor battery, a breaker in here, and that would really help, you know, in case there was a short or something, because it would get very hot. And I've actually seen that happen on a boat where this has actually gotten hot. But having it wired this way with the battery switch, I just click it to off and everything shuts down very quickly. So that's not necessarily to override a breaker, because that's important. Now this one is breakered to all the electronics, and you can't really put a breaker, as far as I know, from the starter motor to the starter battery to the motor, because it pulls so much amps it trips it. So I'm sure some of you might be wondering how I wired up the batteries to the switch and then to the motor and to the other electronics on the boat. Well, this is a diagram that I drafted for you to show you what I did. Again, I'm not a marine electrician, but this system here and these hookups have worked well for me. The only thing missing is the 50 amp fuse for the trolling motor, and I plan on adding that when I hook up the motor. That's the setup, and now I'll just put the cover on and we should be good to go. Done. So guys, I hope that video was a help for you today. And you know, when your boat is out of balance, you can have all kinds of issues. You can have water coming over the transom like I was having. You can have stability problems. You can have trouble getting up on plane. It's just a whole lot of factors that when your boat gets back in balance, everything just works a whole lot better. But you know, there's something worse than having your boat out of balance, and that's having your life out of balance. And believe me, I know a great deal about that. You know, back in around 2000, I ran into a situation that didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but it certainly turned out to be one. Matter of fact, it took me into a deep, deep depression, and trying to work through it, I became incredibly angry. My marriage was struggling. I'd gone to counseling, I tried prescribed medications, nothing seemed to work. And I was deep, deep in this hole, to the point where I seriously was considering just killing myself. That's how bad it got. But you know, God had a plan for me. And finally, when I got to rock bottom and I couldn't do this anymore, I remember driving home and saying, God, I can't do this another day. And when I got home, I opened my Bible. And you know, I had been angry at God. I had been angry at the people that caused this situation in my life, and I was angry at God as well. And so, you know, I kind of just put him on the back burner of my life. But you know, when I got home and I opened that Bible, he began to take me through a journey of healing. And you know, it was a matter of just about 2 weeks, and God had restored me fully to the person I was. He was able to give me that life back in my despair. And he changed everything for me. And you know, I want to share with you the keys to getting that freedom as well. That's why I've written a free book for you. It's called Freedom from Depression in Less Than a Month. I share with you all about the journey, but I share with you about the healing process as well. And so I'd really encourage you to take the time to click on the book. It's found in the description below in the video. And all you have to do is click on it and read it. It doesn't require any email or anything else to capture. It's totally free for you, but it's there for you because I want you to know the freedom that I have found now in relationship with God and how he restored me to who I was. You know, maybe you've tried everything else, but maybe it's time that you just try God. He's the true healer, and he really can set you free. Let me share with you this one scripture verse before I end today. It's found in Psalm 34, verses 17 through 18, and this is what it says. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. If your spirit is crushed today, if you find yourself just engulfed in this vortex of depression, I would really encourage you to seek after God. In the book, I show you just how you can do that and how you can find true and everlasting peace and restoration for your soul. It really is a work of God. God created you because he loves you and he wants you in a right relationship with him. You know, he doesn't design you to be broken. And just like anybody who would long for their child not to suffer, God doesn't want you to suffer either. He wants you to know the peace that you can have by knowing him in the deepest, most wonderful relationship there ever is. So today, I really encourage you, no matter where you are in your life, to just click on the book and read it. It really will make a change in your life. I know it. Not because I wrote it, but because of what God did in my life. So until the next video, always remember that God loves you more than you could ever know. He really, really does. Take care. Get outdoors. And God bless.